Welcome to the International Straight Talk video series on the big emerging markets of the 1990s and beyond.
One of our walkthrough metal detectors, we have some English LCD, an LCD readout, which is in English. We very easily the Turkish language. It's an easy conversion, and they seem to be very delighted in that. So again, they like U.S. products. They like the quality, but if you can customize a little bit to their needs, they respond very positively.
In business, the Turkish instinct for interdependence has often resulted in a curious lack of competitiveness. Small-town merchants and shopkeepers selling similar merchandise, for instance, often work in close proximity to one another. But for one of them to engage in a price war or to try to steal a colleague's longtime customer would be considered shameful by everyone. Some observers feel that this cooperative spirit stems not only from family values, but from a time when professional guilds in Turkey united craftsmen and merchants alike. This means that the American business person seeking distribution, transportation, or other kinds of services in Turkey are very likely to find themselves dealing within a network of business associates rather than with just one business or one group. In the spheres of industry and government administration, these community-oriented values also persist, sometimes to the detriment of efficiency, skill, and accomplishment. You may feel this clash of values in a Turkish office or home. You may say to yourself, gee, everyone I'm visiting with here is so nice. You'll find yourself thinking, everybody's so friendly, so trusting, so loyal, but why aren't I getting something accomplished? I don't seem to be able to impose any efficiency onto this pleasant environment of goodwill. If or when you find yourself thinking like this, it may be of some comfort to you to realize that you're coming face to face with a basic cultural difference, which bears a direct relationship to the values of family.
The way the Turks compete it reminds me of how competitive they are in war. Historically, they just have been extremely aggressive and extremely good at what they do in fighting. And I see a lot of that carried over in the way they conduct their business. They are extremely aggressive. They will compete any way they can to win. And they're not content just with that win. They want to win and win and win. They will not rest. In fact, I doubt if they ever will rest, but they will not feel comfortable until they have eliminated competition in their country of any of your competitors' products. Now, this is quite assuring to a U.S. manufacturer who deals throughout the world, because that's one of the traits you would like to see your importers of all the countries be more aggressive and not be content with living with competition as much as they do. Well, the Turks typically in their business and environment want to be the winner, and not only the winner, but the only one left when he is finished.
Although Turkey operates officially on the Western calendar, its religious festivals, called Bayrams, are still celebrated according to the Muslim lunar calendar. It's important for an American who's contemplating doing business in Turkey to know about the major holidays, not only for travel planning purposes, but because of how these holidays actually affect key business operations. Since the lunar calendar is about 11 days shorter than our Western calendar, Muslim holidays fall earlier to varying degrees each year. The exact dates of these movable feasts, however, are determined and proclaimed by the appropriate Muslim authorities every year. Now, a Muslim Bayram, like a Jewish holiday, begins at sunset on the eve of the day in question and ends at sunset on the following day. Also, half a day of religious preparation precedes the holiday itself, so you'll find many shops and offices closing at noon the day before a major holiday. Only two Bayrams, Seker Bayrami and Kurban Bayrami, are also official public holidays. Now, Friday in Turkey is not a holiday, although it is the Muslim Sabbath. Since Ataturk's time, Turks have observed the Western weekend, so all schools and businesses in Turkey are open on Friday. There are several major holidays in Turkey, along with over a dozen smaller but still important holy days or festival periods. Ramadan is the high holy month of fasting, almost an equivalent of the Christian Lent, but practiced far more universally. For 30 days, a good Muslim permits nothing to pass through his lips during daylight hours. Not food, not drink, not cigarette smoke, not even the glue from the back of a postage stamp. For an American doing business in Turkey, Ramadan is probably the worst time to go. But if you find yourself in Turkey during this 30-day period, which occurs in the spring of each year at varying times, then you should keep a few things in mind. Your Turkish counterparts, who are strict Muslims, are going to be getting a little testy along about mid-afternoon each day, especially the cigarette smokers, of whom there are zillions in Turkey. Try not to whip out your cigarettes if you're still among the politically incorrect in this country who smokes, and offer your Turkish associates a smoke. This will not be taken kindly. Be tolerant of domestic and office colleagues, especially if the fasting occurs toward the hot summer months when tempers fray and efficiency declines. Just attribute it all to Ramazan kafasi, which means Ramazan head. Likewise, you probably shouldn't invite your Turkish associates to lunch during Ramazan, unless they initiate the gesture. Finally, if your business in Turkey involves any kind of training or technology transfer, do not set up any training sessions or classes during Ramazan. We all know what it's like to try to concentrate on learning something when our tummies are growling. Well, during Ramazan, that's exactly how most Turks feel most of the day. Of course, that's the point. For each one of the faithful to personally experience some of the deprivation experienced by the Prophet Muhammad when he went into the wilderness and fasted in order to receive the Word of God. Seker Bayram, or the sugar holiday, is a 3-day festival at the end of Ramazan. It is also a public holiday, so expect shops to be closed and hotels and buses and so forth to be crowded. During this period, children often go from door to door asking for treats. Adults exchange cards, call on each other, and visit their dead relatives in cemeteries. Now, Kurban Bayram, or the Feast of the Sacrifice, is the most important religious festival of the Muslim year in Turkey. It's also a 4-day public holiday. Kurban Bayram commemorates the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. As you may recall, God had commanded Abraham to sacrifice his only son, but at the last minute, he allowed the substitution of a ram. The heads of many Muslim households reenact this story by slaughtering a sheep and distributing the meat among family, friends, and the needy. During Kurban Bayram, there's an exchange of cards, much visiting of friends and relatives, and putting on new clothes. Americans visiting Turkey during this period often find themselves involved in the Kurban Bayram festivities, and forever afterwards carry with them the image of the throat cutting of the sacrificial sheep. So be forewarned if you're squeamish.
Can U.S. Small businesses do well in Turkey? We're a small business, and it is one of our strongest countries. I equated almost Turkey is to the Middle East, is pretty much the Netherlands is to Europe. They traditionally have been the gateway with their strong ports to Europe. Turkey is the same way, so they know how to do business. In fact, if you start selling to Turkey, you can expect your products to end up in other Middle East countries because they have that strong relationships, even today with Jordan and Iran and Iraq, where those countries, it's been our experience, do not come to the United States looking for U.S. products, which they like. They like the idea of U.S. quality and so forth. But they'll turn to Turkey because traditionally that's where they turn.
Turkish society is one of the very few in the world where social graces and personal etiquette are taken very seriously. In large part, this is attributable to the influence of 500 years of the Ottoman Empire's rule, during which the most minute infractions of a complex social code of etiquette was grounds for execution and sometimes far worse. Of course, an American doing business in Turkey today doesn't have to worry about being dragged from his hotel room and beheaded in the street for bad manners. But the impact of bad manners is sufficiently strong that a good grasp of the reasons for etiquette, as well as a practiced graciousness in social and business situations, is a definite business asset in Turkey. The first rule in practicing good manners in a complex culture like Turkey is to relax and not worry. Nobody expects you to be perfect. In fact, your real advantage lies in the fact that nobody expects you to be anything but an American. The next first rule is never be the first to do anything. Always follow the lead of your companions or host, and never be afraid to ask sincerely concerning proper etiquette.
It's been my experience, especially dealing with the big emerging market countries, Korea, China, Turkey, that they will often volunteer the biographies of their delegation leadership. and in return they will expect the biographies of the leaders or the hosts that will be greeting them. This information contains information about what they're doing now, about what they have been doing, of course, their education. It talks about their age, which we're not especially ready to volunteer, but it talks about their other interests, and it talks about their family. So that's really important to them, and it will be expected. So it's good to have that information available.
Now let's take a look at a few of the most important things for an American doing business in Turkey to keep in mind. In Turkey, everybody shakes hands when entering a room and when leaving it. Failure to shake hands when meeting someone or saying hello is considered rude, and a simple wave of the hands and a cheery U.S.-style "hello everybody" doesn't cut it either. Most of us in America are accustomed to very casual greetings, even from people who we know well. The level of intimacy of the greeting has very little to do with our perception of how the other person feels about us, whether or not they respect us, and whether we are considered close and connected or distant and therefore potentially an enemy. In Turkey, how a person is greeted by another is taken as a gauge of the relationship, with all that's implied, including close or distant, friend or non-friend, respect or lack of respect, and trust or distrust. This means that it's not efficient use of time for an American visiting Turkey to walk into a room, say hello to everybody, and try to get down to business, because such an action will leave everyone privately wondering, speculating, and concluding what you meant by such an approach or attitude. This not only disrupts everybody's attention, but it may also foreclose certain aspects of a possible relationship between you, especially if your casual greeting habits are reinforced by later equally casual behavior. Along similar lines, when you're standing in conversation, lack of respect may be inferred by your Turkish associate if you do things like lean against the wall or a doorway, or put your hands casually in your pockets. It's especially important to be almost prim and proper when having a meeting with a person of high authority or status in Turkey. It's important to sit properly. Slouching or sitting carelessly communicates disrespect on a non-verbal level to many Turks, especially those who are not personally acquainted with Americans.
There are a lot of business people in Turkey who are exposed to Western ways of doing business, and they may be as relaxed and as informal as an American business person, but at the same time an American business person visiting Turkey may encounter someone who's very traditional. It's difficult to make a generalization, but overall it may be suggested that an American business person should pay attention to personal details and personal relationships, talk about each other's families, their kids, if they happen to have some, and then start talking about their business as usual. No one is afraid of talking about business, and the Turkish counterpart knows that the American businessman or woman is there to talk about business. That is understood, that's realized, but there's no need to rush things.
The Turkish concept of friendships, rights, and duties is very different from what we're familiar with in the U.S. In the U.S., a friend is someone whose company you enjoy, who can be asked for help, who shares your interests, and who can be trusted. But a friend isn't primarily cultivated for what that friend can do for you. To a Turk, a friend is all of the above, but it's also someone whose duty is to give assistance to a friend. Now, this leads to one of the most frequent misunderstandings between Turks and Americans. A situation where the American feels set up to do favors, and Turks feel let down by someone who proves they can't possibly be a true friend. Here's how it typically works. Our hypothetical American goes to Turkey prepared to be very friendly, American style. This generally means being verbally friendly and sharing personal thoughts and feelings with another person. And that's about it. In general, we Americans like to be friendly, but not to get too close, especially with people we work with or are doing business with. So when our American meets a Turkish colleague, everything seems to go smoothly at first. But pretty soon, the Turk starts thinking, what a friendly person. He must be a real friend. He really likes me. So just to be sure, the Turk double checks by saying something along the lines of, I like you very much and want to be your good friend. To which the American replies in his innocent, friendly American manner, I like you too and we're already good friends, or something similar. But soon, an opportunity arrives for the Turk to ask his new good friend, the American, for the kind of favor which any friend would do for any other friend. And unfortunately, our American feels unable to do the favor. Furthermore, the American may suspect that the Turk is moving in on the relationship, using it to ask for favors. Now, in America, this would definitely be bad form, and the American is sorely tempted to say no, in a way that leaves no doubt that the request was unwelcome. So what's wrong with this picture? Well, what's wrong is that a friend in Turkey never says no.